It is May 22nd. We're here for a work session of the Laramie City Council. We'll go ahead and hop into the first one and begin with public comment on non-agenda items. If any member of the public wishes to speak to the council on an item not on our work session list tonight, go ahead and come forward in the room. Okay, seeing none, I'm going to close public comment, and we will open the work session on the recommended budget. Director Wade, City Manager, who's taking the lead here?
Mayor, for the work session, I will take the lead. Just reminding the council, we've now had 3 work sessions on your operating and maintenance budget to review and discuss that. Tonight is, I believe, your 4th opportunity and last opportunity before we would move to the special meeting where you have submitted some amendments for revision to the budget. So with that, I guess we would ask you if you have questions for us. We've covered all the material in the budget booklet as of this point in time.
Thank you, City Manager. Councilors, are there any final questions before we move on with the rest of the budget process? Okay. Easy enough. Thank you, City Manager. Is there anything else you wanted to cover in the work session, or just provide that opportunity?
No, there is not. I think we're ready for the special meeting if you are.
Fantastic. That's great. Okay, we're going to take public comment on the work session. If there's any member of the public online or in person interested in that opportunity for public comment, go ahead and raise your hand on the Zoom call or come forward in the room. There are no people in either place, so we're going to close public comment here. And councilors will adjourn that work session. All right, I'm going to call the special meeting to order. And City Clerk, do we need to read any sort of notice for the special meeting?
I'd be happy to, Mayor.
Please.
Notice is hereby given that a work session and special meeting of the Laramie City Council will be held Wednesday, May 22nd, 2024 at 6:00 p.m. at 406 Ivinson Avenue, Council Chambers, and via Zoom meeting ID 869-3709-2292, passcode 631591 for the following purpose. Work session, number 1, capital and recommended budget, and special meeting, number 1, call to order, 2, roll call, 3, public comment on non-agenda related items, 4, recommended budget amendments, and 5, adjournment.
Thank you, City Clerk. I'm going to have you go ahead and call roll for the special meeting.
Gabriel.
Here.
Newman.
Here.
O'Doherty.
Here.
Pierce.
Here.
Richardson.
Here.
Shumway.
Here.
Somerville.
Here.
Cumby.
Here.
Harrington.
Here.
That's 9 present and 0 absent, Your Honor.
Thank you, City Clerk. We're going to go ahead and hop into the budget amendments then, councilors. And as you'll see in your packet, you can pull those up. We'll begin with Councilor Newman, as his is first in order in our packet.
So my amendment, I move to reduce the fiscal year 2026 recommended general fund budget by $15,000, removing the Parklet construction project, and to reduce the fiscal year 2024 general fund by $15,000 in the next staff budget amendment resolution, adjusting for unspent appropriations on the current phase of this project.
Second.
Motion by Newman, second by Richardson. Councilor Newman, I'll go back to you for an explanation.
Sure. So with downtown parking coming up and talking to Assistant City Manager, there were no plans to construct any new ones anyways. So just to get it off the books, I did want to add that this keeps all the current ones that we have. It doesn't get rid of any of those. So Laird Ice Lanes and the other one will still be in operation and be used.
Thank you, Councilor Newman. Councilors, any questions? Councilor Shumway, please.
Well, I have a comment, so I think I'll wait.
Cool. Questions, Council? Councilor Gabriel?
Yeah, just for clarification purposes, I was under the impression that there was another parklet planned. That is not the case.
Assistant City Manager, do you want to address that? Welcome.
Honorable Mayor, through you to Councilor Gabriel. Staff had assessed numerous areas to try to put a parklet at, and we hadn't come up with any, how do you want to say, spectacular or shattering locations that we felt were going to be really successful. We did identify one that was kind of behind altitude, but it was obviously very close to Depot Park. And I think at this point, with some changes that we have heard might be coming in downtown with potential loss of Laramie Lane, that it might make sense to hold off until we know what happens to see if the implementation of another parklet in that area would be amenable in the future if we are able to add some parking spaces, make some corrections.
Thank you. Councilor Gabriel, please.
And in the future, Todd, you mean how long?
Oh, Honorable Mayor, through you to Councilor Gabriel. I don't know, actually. There is some speculation that we might see some construction at the Laramie Lane site, maybe by as early as next spring.
Oh.
But that's all based on private development.
Thank you, Councilor.
Thank you for the clarification.
Appreciate that. Councilor Richardson, did you have a question?
No, I think he answered.
Councilor Shumway?
This is another comment, so I think I'll wait.
I'm going to come to you first for comments, though I'll probably forget. So, I was curious about maybe I don't know how this is sort of like processed on a staff end. I mean, I can read the motion, and then the purpose and objective seem to outline sort of like a more what happens with staff. And I was just curious because until adequate parking is available was a phrase that felt like maybe too vague for me, because I think there are people that are never going to be satisfied with the amount of parking and could, if we replace one spot, is that an adequate replacement? Councilor Newman, you got a thought there?
Assistant City Manager and I talked about this word because I didn't know a different word to use. And
Sure.
I think adequate for what we were thinking about is just until more was added.
Okay.
Because Assistant City Manager and I both agreed that it will never be fixed. Like parking
Right.
will probably always be a problem. So, and I didn't want to put like 50 spots or
Right.
25. So I think I trust future city councils to say it's adequate. Let's talk about it again.
Great. Any other questions? Councilor
Actually,
Richardson?
do have a question. That was kind of my question before. But so if they are potentially building in that space springtime, it could be ready by 2026, meaning that we would probably want some dollars available for another parklet in 2026. And so we'd have to bring it forward again, right, to put it back in the budget.
Yeah, Honorable Mayor, through you, I think that would be in conjunction with the term of, and maybe improved parking is a better term than adequate parking, but I don't know if we'll have spaces added into the system at that point. I think there's some things at play, and I'm really pretty comfortable. We have the Curmudgeon Volunteer Group who is more than able to actually build the flooring that we've designed and the surrounds at a pretty low amount of money with their volunteer labor. So I don't feel real hesitant to come back to council for maybe a potential budget amendment, hopefully on a smaller amount, because we won't have to buy tables because we'll move tables from Laramie Lane into that spot. There's some savings that we'll have with those. We might even be able to use those flower beds at Laramie Lane to make the surround. There's just some stuff that's in flux that myself and staff, which is planning, has been kind of heading those up, are not super concerned about them not moving forward at this time and believe that we could come back at a future time.
Thank you, Councilor. Other questions? Okay, we'll go to the public on this item. If there's any member of the public wishing to speak to this, go ahead and come forward, raise your hand. Seeing none in attendance, I will close public comment. Back to the council for comments. Councilor Shumway.
Thank you. Come on, okay. The two things I wanted to mention, I think Councilor Richardson brought up one of them. But first of all, we're only looking at one space. That's one parking space that these parklets take up. And it adds to the ambience of downtown. I really like that. And also the Curmudgeons has been mentioned, does the work for us. I don't know how long the Curmudgeons will be going. I think they, one or two of them move on and two more come in on the other end. But I would like, if there is a possibility to do this, I like the idea. I like the idea because of what it does for the downtown. I would like to have that money available so that we don't have to come back and do a budget amendment. The $15,000 is not going to go anywhere if we don't spend it. And it's something that can just, sit in that fund until it's being used, but then we have all of our options open. So those are my two comments.
Thank you, Councillor. I'm going to go to Councillor Pierce. I had Councillor Newman next, but maybe you want to wait? Okay.
Yeah, I mean, my thoughts were exactly the same as Councillor Shumway. I really love that one that we do have, and I would really like to see another downtown. And I get the whole parking thing, but that's kind of been blown up really a lot more than it needs to be. So, and I think if we add a few spots here and there, I think it's a fair trade-off. But, either keeping it in there or adding a budget amendment later, I don't know what the best choice is on that. But I do love the little parklets, or whatever the title is.
Thank you, Councillor. Are there comments, Council? Councillor O'Doherty, then Councillor Richardson.
I want to say that parklet, the one that's there on Ivinson and Second, it brings a lot of joy, and I've seen people. It's just pretty, and before it was funny, and I just think they're joyful, and that's good in summer in Laramie.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Richardson.
I'm just kind of trying to process this a little bit. Part of me wonders, should we just reduce this down a bit, since Assistant City Manager said they don't need nearly that amount of funding, or doesn't think they do, but then it's like, well, what's the point of that? We just don't use it, right? So I'm just thinking out loud. So if anybody wants to counter with me, apparently, then just free. Yeah. Anyway.
Thank you, Councillor. Anyone else want to make a comment? Councillor Newman, did you want to make one? I have a comment as well, but
Sure. So the whole reason why I wrote this is looking at it from the budget standpoint, and talking to Assistant City Manager, because they couldn't find a location, and looking at the budget, I hate having money tied up if we're not going to use it. So if we can, and that was the whole reason why, after talking to Assistant City Manager about this, and I know it's only like 30 grand, but it's still getting tied up, and I'm not a fan of it. So that's it.
thank you, Councillor. And it is 15 over 2 years, in each year though, correct? So it is 30 total. Other comments? Councillor Shumway.
Real quick.
Sure.
I think, we maybe lose one parking spot for a car, but we're gaining 30 parking spots for people. And so I like the idea of bringing them down to the downtown. They're going to go there and eat and then go shopping and stuff like that. So they'll find a place to park, and then they're parked downtown and they're going to go do shopping. I think it's a great idea. And if we can, do one of those every 2 years or one every other year, that's great.
Thank you, Councillor. One thing I've been thinking about is that this year, okay, we don't have an idea, but by removing the funding in the next year of the biennium, we've also decided that we're going to have maybe nothing unless you all, I won't be on the council, but unless you all decide to, sort of bring this back. But one thing I have been thinking about is the life cycle of these projects since we started during the pandemic, right? The Hollyhock Commons was really well used the first year, and then sort of use declined a little bit. Laradise Lane, I think, saw the same. Our parklet has been different because the parklet changed. And so it went from sort of the whimsical thing first to like a much more utility type space, much, more practical. And that, I think, is kind of an exciting part of a parklet, and they can pop up in different spots. But if our staff isn't doing anything with it this year, it isn't planning to expand this program, okay, but I do have some faith that we'll add parking to be adequate. The adequate word gives me some pause on this one, to be honest. And I'm not sure sort of that's why I was asking where how staff views the implementation of this, right? Like, if we're removing it until something happens, how does that trigger affect staff? Like, what do you do with the trigger, right? Like, okay, we added 5 spots, and we decide that's adequate. Is then it sort of like the responsibility of staff to bring the budget amendment back to council and say, okay, we're there. We can take that money back. We're going to do another parklet. And so I have a little bit of curiosity about how that might play out in sort of like the real world. I'm not opposed to removing it this year, but I am a little bit worried about the second year because I think we may need it given Laird Esling. I don't know who's next. Councillor Pierce?
You know, I have actually a question now, thinking about and trying to remember the size of that parklet. Is it possible to put bicycle parking still in that spot, to have a parklet and bicycle parking? Or is that not enough room? Because that would really be cool, and then we could get folks biking, not driving, and then the whole idea of parking downtown may not be so much of a thing. But I don't know if it's...
I think the question is, can we have ground level bike parking and 5 stories of parklet?
Yes.
Too soon? Assistant City Manager, sorry.
Honorable Mayor, that still stings a little bit.
It does. It hurt coming out.
Honorable Mayor, through you to Councilor Pierce. The parklet, the second in Ivinson, is roughly 10 by 20 with a 1-foot surround, so 22 by 11. It takes up the full parking space. The problem with bike parking on the pavement outside is it kind of gets into sight triangle and turn radius of that corner there from moving onto Ivinson from second onto Ivinson. So I'd be real hesitant about trying to add bike parking on that side. On the other side, it's too close to a diagonal parking space that's coming in play. So I don't know that we could really add it in that area. We have seen a lot, Laramie's a bike community. We have the high capacity rack that goes in front of Coal Creek, the other one that stayed in front of Crowbar, and then all the decorative bike racks around downtown, plus a few extras that have cropped up. So I think we have adequate bike parking in the downtown at this point. I just don't think we could land it around the one that is at Second and Ivinson.
Okay, thanks.
Councillor Richardson, Vice Mayor.
I think I feel similarly, that I would feel good about removing the 15,000 for 2024 and leaving the 2026 amount. I think I don't know who just said that. I think Mayor said that.
Councillor Vice Mayor.
I just still have a problem with an objective that is not measurable. And so until adequate parking is available, I think it's too open for interpretation, and I'm just not sure until additional. I'm just used to writing objectives that are measurable.
Before we get down this path too far, how does staff handle this? I think that's maybe the question. Is there anyone on staff that wants to speak to, this sort of purpose and objective part of it requests broad terms, right? Like, it doesn't request exactly measurable outcomes, but I'm not sure what happens here. Like, how do we add the money back? Maybe some of those questions, City Manager.
Council, a good question. The motion is what we will abide by, to the letter, of course. The purpose or objective, I understand we've used the term adequate. I take this conversation you're having as really policy direction. So Todd and I will be mindful. We won't be moving forward with parklets without coming back to you all for an understanding of where the council at that time is. And so I just consider this policy direction for staff, and we will adhere to the letter of the motion.
Okay.
Thank you for clarifying that. I appreciate it.
Councillor Doherty, please.
It sounded like that Assistant Manager Feeser was thinking that they didn't have the staff to take care of another parklet this year. Was that my understanding, or?
Honorable Mayor, through you to Councilor O'Doherty. I actually don't believe that. They take very little care. As I indicated in the email, Parks is responsible for installation kind of physical maintenance and repairs and de-installation, and then facilities basically send somebody down and cleans them on a daily basis, even Saturdays and Sundays, to try to make sure that they stay presentable for the public. I don't believe that we actually are limited in staff to care for more parklets. It's about finding the right location and the right bang for the parklet, because we could place a parklet and it could be a dud. You know, nobody wants to go there. Maybe there's no amenities. The one at 2nd and Ivinson has been very popular. Very utilitarian base. It's got 2nd Street Deli right next to it. Is well used. People buy some to-go foods at Big Hollow and come over, or they go buy at the Mexican place across the way, or the Crowbar, and they come in. And we know because we empty that trash right next to there, and there's boxes from everybody down there, so we know that it's used heavily. But you know, finding that right location for the next parklet is the key. And what I had hoped after the success of 2nd and Ivinson is that we would have maybe somebody request one, right? Hey, I'd like to have that near my place, see if it can help on this side. We just didn't see that. And when we reached out, when planning staff, because parklets are really born out of the planning realm, you know, engaging downtowns. And when they reached out to the businesses downtown, we didn't have anybody that was really wanting one, right? And so then we were thinking about where could we place it that has the least impact but still has some impact. But you know, it was really close to where Laramie Lane already is, so do we need that conflict? Or it was really close to Depot Park. How do you balance that out? And that's the stuff that staff's really taken about. As Janine said, we'll follow the motion and as to the letter as it's stated, and we'll just keep it on plan that maybe as parking improves, we get some more spaces or do something with potential future amendment, that we bring it back and assess it. As things change at Laramie Lane, maybe we assess it and do some changes.
Okay. Thank you. Councillor Newman.
And just remember, it doesn't get rid of anyone that we have now. Right. I wanted to make sure that was clear, because that was something that we talked about a whole bunch. Because when I first brought it up, he thought I was trying to get rid of everything. I don't know if that matters, but it says the disk space is insufficient. But so I don't want to get rid of the ones we have, because I use them too. It's just, let's add some parking. And I made it as broad terms as I could.
Thank you, Councillor. Are there other thoughts here? So would this, am I reading this then, if we're going by the word of the motion, that this is reducing the $15,000 for this summer and then the $15,000 for both of the next 2 years? Is that correct? Or just the next 2 years, this summer and next summer?
Honorable Mayor, so what the motion would do for the budget ahead of you, fiscal year 25 and 2026, is it would reduce the recommended 26 appropriation and then direct staff at the next centrally prepared amendment to bring forward an amendment to you to reduce the 2024 budget downward for the existing appropriation.
Thank you. I appreciate that clarification. Okay. Councillors, any more thoughts? All right, Councillor Newman, anything before we vote? Okay. City Clerk, go ahead and call the roll, please.
Gabriel.
No.
Newman.
Yes.
O'Doherty.
Yes.
Pierce.
No.
Richardson.
Yes.
Shumway.
No.
Somerville.
No.
Cumbie.
Yes.
Harrington.
Yes.
That's 5 yeses and 4 noes, Your Honor.
Thank you. That amendment has been approved. Councillor Richardson, you're up next.
Okay. I move to allocate $75,000 in fiscal year 2025 capital construction fund budget to be used to develop parking along First Street between Grand Avenue and Park Street, including evaluation and possible updates to parking in the train depot lot.
Second.
Motion by Richardson, seconded by Newman. Councillor Richardson.
So in creating this, I was again thinking about the conversation we had when we were trying to implement housing and people's real concerns about, you know, that we had these ideas in mind, but nothing concrete. And so I'd love to make these concrete so that if we do have something come forward again with housing, we have some more, we can show the public that there is going to be more availability. The gist of it.
Great. Councillors, any questions? Councillor Pierce, please.
Yeah, I'm just wondering if that amount is enough
there a staff member that wants to take a crack at that? Thank you, Assistant City Manager. Short straw again.
Honorable Mayor, through you to Councilor Pierce, I'm going to put on my engineering hat, which Director Webb loves when I do.
I've got one of those too.
They kind of brought it through me. This amount is strictly for assessment and engineering of parking improvements along First Street is what I kind of envisioned. One of the things that when I first started talking to Director Webb about First Street is, it kind of, Depot Park kind of acts as a place for water to escape the downtown. And I'm extremely concerned about putting in a 6-inch high back curb that may prevent water from continuing to move into Depot Park. And so we'll have to assess some stormwater management as we look into this type of improvement in that area. I also think that we've got to look at what is the traffic impacts and what's the analysis, because right now that street in front of Depot Park's two-way. It's not actually a one-way street. And so we've got to be cognizant of what's happening and what can actually be done. Well, one of the things we'll also have to assess is tree health and tree life and what the engineering factors are around that. I do believe $75,000 is enough to assess for these areas along First Street to make sure that we're there to be able to get a good plan in place that doesn't negatively impact stormwater, which is very impactful to our downtown, that will provide for hopefully some additional parking and also provide some comfort level for our engineering staff as we assess the impacts to traffic and parking as we try to assess what we can put along that area. So.
Other questions? Assistant City Manager, before you sit down, when it says, because we are using the sort of the letter of the motion, used to develop parking along First Street, does that prevent you from doing the work of assessing for the development of parking? To, understand tree health and things of that sort. I hate to be like sort of nitpicky with it, but.
Mayor, if I could, it does say including evaluation and possible updates to parking in the depot lot. So I don't know, how do you feel about that? You could amend it to be more specific to sort of an engineering analysis, I guess.
Yeah.
I'd be happy to amend that. I think partly because if people saw this passing, if I read this, I'd be like, oh man, they're developing parking on First Street, right? Yep. So I'd like to make it clear for all of us that this is more towards assessment. So I don't know if I can amend my own motion.
Sure can.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Allocate capital construction fund budget to be used to assess parking along First Street between Grand Avenue and Park Street, including evaluation and possible updates to parking the train depot lot.
Second.
Okay, so the motion is to strike development, replace it with assess. Okay, motion by Richardson, seconded by Doherty. Any discussion there, council? Okay, any members of the public wanting to speak to that? Still seeing none. Close public comment. Council, any comments? City Clerk, you can call the roll on that amendment when you are ready.
Gabriel.
Yes.
Newman.
Yes.
O'Doherty.
Yes.
Pierce.
Yes.
Richardson.
Yes.
Shumway.
Yes.
Somerville.
Yes.
Cumby.
Yes.
Harrington.
Yes.
That's 9 yeses and 0 nos, Your Honor.
Thank you, City Clerk. Back to the main motion. Councilors, any more discussion on this? Questions, comments? Okay. We'll go to the public on this. Any members of the public wishing to speak to it can come forward, raise your hands. We'll close public comment. All right, councilors, any comments before the vote? Okay. City Clerk, go ahead and call the roll, please.
Gabriel.
Yes.
Newman.
Yes.
O'Doherty.
Yes.
Pierce.
Yes.
Richardson.
Yes.
Shumway.
Yes.
Somerville.
Yes.
Cumby.
Yes.
Harrington.
Yes.
That's 9 yeses and 0 nos, Your Honor.
Thank you, City Clerk. That item has been approved. And Councilor Gabriel, do you have that amendment that you were interested in
I
as
do.
well for the city manager? Go ahead.
Yes, and you all saw this from the city manager in your inbox earlier this week. I move to support public engagement activities of city boards and commissions by including $18,500 annually within the general fund budget for fiscal biennium FY 2025-2026.
Second.
Motion by Gabriel, seconded by Richardson. I'm going to go to the city manager for an explanation here.
Thank you, council. The suggestion here is to seed some small amounts of money to boards and commissions of the city that have within their mission and purpose public education, information, and outreach. And the thought was here, Council, as you know, you have for many years had goals each year for probably the last decade to continually chip away at improving the city's communication with residents. And so the thought here was that these boards and commissions who have that within their purview could probably use a little bit of funding. With this, they could engage in public information, they could raise awareness about the issues they work on, and they could raise awareness about city efforts in the areas they work. For instance, Traffic Safety Commission could talk about traffic safety issues, publish advertisements or things of that nature, host a public forum. So that's the intent here. The most any of the boards and commissions would receive is $3,000, and those are for the larger of the boards and commissions, and the rest would be receiving just a small allocation of $1,000 to $1,500, with the largest being Urban Renewal Authority, Traffic Safety Commission, and Planning Commission, each recommended at $3,000.
Thank you, City Manager. And you said it was all boards that have that in their mission? Is that all of our boards?
No,
All the
it
city
is-
boards and commissions, or which ones?
Sorry.
I don't know if it's faster to say which ones are included or excluded, but I'd be interested to know.
The list of those included is the Board of Health, Environmental Advisory Commission, Advisory Commission on Disabilities, Police Advisory Commission, Youth Council, Parks, Tree, and Recreation Advisory Committee, Ranch Advisory Commission, Urban Renewal Authority, Traffic Safety, and Planning Commission are recommended. And all of those do have that within their purview. That is not, however, Mayor, all of the city's boards and commissions. For instance, Zoning Board of Adjustment, I don't know what they would educate about.
Right.
So.
Okay, thank you. Councilors, other questions, comments? Councilor Richardson, please, then Councilor Newman.
Thank you. I'm just curious if, I really like this idea, and I would like to utilize our boards and commissions a little bit more for outreach, so I think it's great. I'm wondering, though, is there, and I feel like there already kind of is this wiggle room within our budget at the city, if a different board and commission had an idea of outreach they wanted to do, but it wasn't budgeted in here, would it make sense to have another, is it something they can already access, or would it make sense to have another line item that's like other, just in case something comes up and we want to, and the board wants to do something?
Council, we have for a number of years had some public relations money in what is called our General Accounts Cost Center. So when things like that, random things come up, that's a place we can go to without having to come back to you for, $1,000. What's being suggested here is that the administrative division that is the staff liaison to these boards and commissions will put money purposefully in those budgets, but it will not eliminate the sort of small amount in the general accounts that could be used for unforeseen things. I guess what I could offer to you is this is kind of an experiment, and if there are boards or commissions that have ideas that are not on this list, we'll work to accommodate them, and we could add them to future lists for your budget work in the spring.
Thank you.
Councilor Newman and then Councilor Pierce.
I have a comment. That's kind of a question at the same time, so can you bear with me?
Sure, I can.
If we're going strictly by what the motion says, it says nothing that these guys help us achieve our goals. But then if you read why we're giving them this money, it's because it's to help achieve our goals. So I don't know if we should put something in the motion that the public engagement activities to help. I don't know, something. I don't know how, I'm having a hard time phrasing it, so if somebody could help me with this.
Can I offer an amendment that furthers council goals to the end of it?
Go ahead and make the motion, Councilor.
Yeah, so I would move, I can't see it in front of me right now, but to add, to further council goals. Would that work?
So that would mean to insert after public engagement to further council goals.
Of city,
Right.
yeah.
Wait, that might not be right.
Never mind, I can't.
To support public engagement activities of city boards and commissions that help achieve, there you go.
Help achieve city council goals.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll make that motion. So I would like,
City Clerk, do you have anything close to what they just said written down? I started and I kind of lost it midway
I
through.
can,
I'm withdrawing. If I made a motion, I'm withdrawing it.
Okay. Do you have it in mind? You want to
Yeah,
restate
so-
it somehow?
Just Pat say, he's got it right in front of him there.
Well, he's got it, but you have the right.
okay, so make a motion that after city public, or city boards and commissions, to help achieve city council goals by including 18,500 and so on. Does that make sense? I think so. It makes sense in my head now.
Is it a second?
Second.
Motion by Newman, second by Doherty. Councilors on the discussion. Any members of the public wish to speak to the amendment? None, I will close public comment. Council, City Clerk, call the roll on the amendment.
Gabriel.
Yes.
Newman.
Yes.
O'Doherty.
Yes.
Pierce.
Yes.
Richardson.
Yes.
Shumway.
Yes.
Somerville.
Yes.
Cumby.
Yes.
Harrington.
Yes.
That's 9 yeses and 0 nos, Your Honor.
Thank you, City Clerk. We're back on the main motion. Any other discussion, Council? Councilor Pierce, please. Oh, forgive me, Pierce and Cumby up next. You're up.
Yeah, okay. And I don't mean to play devil's advocate at all, because I do like this idea, but my concern is rolling it out, and what if one of our boards and commissions comes up with an idea that's like, I mean, how do you do that balancing act where everybody kind of stays on the same page and the idea is actually a good one? I mean, I doubt that would happen, but just to like throw it out there for a discussion, I don't know. I just feel like I said, I really like the idea. I just don't want to put extra work, and then I don't want to have upset because of the extra work after, because of it, if that makes any sense at all.
Thank you, Councilor Pierce, Vice Mayor Cumby, and then Councilor Newman.
I just appreciate this motion, and a number of the boards that I sit on are already working on public outreach ideas that would be appropriate for the board. I know that the Police Advisory Board wants to do some outreach, and possibly the Board of Health has done outreach in the past and has expressed that. Planning Commission also has been attending public events and working more. So I think to have that availability, but I do share your question about the message.
Right.
So, but
Thank you, Vice Mayor. Councilor Newman?
So ever since this was emailed to us, I had a question. How did the numbers come about? So like, how come it's not even from board to board? And if you've answered this, I totally apologize, but it's just kind of weird, like, the Board of Health gets $1,000, but and the ranch, but then like planning gets $3, and I don't understand why.
Through you, Mayor, Councilor Newman, that's a great question. It's certainly somewhat subjective, and what I was looking at was sort of the breadth of the responsibility of the board. So the Board of Health, for instance, although it sounds very broad when you say health, like health could be anything, right? But when you actually read what the ordinance, what types of health issues the Board of Health gets involved in, it's really centered around restaurant licensing and inspection, tattoo body piercing parlors. So it's pretty narrow. Whereas the Planning Commission, by contrast, has a very broad sort of scope of work that they work in. And anyway, but it is certainly subjective, just based on my best guess and an attempt to start somewhere and just try it and see how it goes.
Go ahead, Councilor.
And then, once again, if we're following the motion though, we're just allocating this money to all the boards and commissions. So, right? Am I reading this correctly? So even ones that don't have the public outreach in their vision statement, the way this is, it just says city boards and commissions. It's not directly specifying these 8, I think, or how many ever there were. Am I reading this correctly?
Yeah, no, I think what Jen and I were just saying, the reason I disclosed in that, the amount to each board and the division that staffs it, was so that these guys would know where to assign it in the budget if they choose to. And then Jen has just said to me that she would likely also add a project code to it so we can track it. So do you want to add anything, Jen? Yeah. So because we won't just put 18,500, we'll actually track the amounts for each board. And so to your question about the letter of the motion, that's why we disclose the detail, because the motion will accomplish what's in that chart. That's more like the accounting work that they do behind the scenes.
Right, and I figured that too, but
Yeah.
I was just, I don't know, back to what Councilor Richardson said, what somebody, and then Pierce, what if, I don't know, we're just having a hard time with it, just like, you guys get $1,000, well, what if they need 1,200, right? So that's the part that was like, and I never really thought about that until Councilor Pierce said something, and it's just like, well, what if they need, 1,200, but we only gave them 1,000. So do you have to come back and do a budget amendment then?
No.
Mayor, through you, no. So
Okay.
we manage our cost center budgets to the total of the bottom line. So any particular, like if they went over by $200, what I would expect the staff liaison to do was to determine if they could accommodate that $200 overage within the bottom line of, say, for instance, the planning division budget. And then we would work through the details. But if you had a board or commission, by contrast, who wanted to come up with a $10,000 public information campaign, staff would probably say, you're going to need to go to council and seek authorization for that.
Okay.
Thank you, City Manager. Thank you. Any other questions, Vice Mayor, please?
I had a comment.
Yeah, go ahead. Comments are fine, sir.
Okay. I just wanted to say that, for example, the Board of Health, when the situation of COVID came up and we were wanting to do more public education, the Board of Health combined with multiple agencies, and then we negotiated with the city, the county, and Ivinson Hospital for monies to support that. So if larger issues come up, then I think there are other avenues, but my experience with the Police Advisory Board is they're wanting to do some planning right now, and we're trying to figure out, that was a question that came up in the last meeting, do we have a budget for outreach? And so I think it would give them kind of a working budget, but if there were a larger issue, then there are other resources and avenues available.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. Councilor Doherty, please.
So two of the boards that I'm a liaison with, the Advisory Commission on Disabilities and the Environmental Advisory Committee, both have projects kind of in mind with the EAC. It's to promote composting and maybe have some kind of, gathering to show good ways to compost. And with the Disabilities Committee, it's always, like making things more accessible on how to do. And so right now, yeah, anyway, I think it's a good idea. Thanks.
Thank you, Councilor. Vice Mayor.
And I would say that our Disabilities Advisory Board, that we have been participating in Pride Fest as well as Freedom Has a Birthday, and the things that we have provided for those events, Councilor O'Doherty and I have paid for those, and board members have paid for that. And this would relieve the board members from paying for the supplies or the little prizes and things that we give out, and it would give us a budget to operate within.
Thank you. Other comments? Okay. Will the public on this, any members of the public wishing to speak to this amendment, go ahead and come forward or raise your hand. Seeing none, I'll close public comment. Back to the council before the vote. City Clerk, please call the roll.
Gabriel.
Yes.
Newman.
Yes.
O'Doherty.
Yes.
Pierce.
Yes.
Richardson.
Yes.
Shumway.
Yes.
Somerville,
Yes.
Harrington,
Yes.
Cumby.
Yes.
That's 9 yeses and 0 nos, Your Honor.
Thank you, City Clerk. That item has been approved. And yes, the amendment has been approved. Thank you.
Yep.
That would be the budget amendment, correct? That was the main motion. There was no amendment to that one.
No, there was.
I mean, it was a budget amendment, but it was,
But it wasn't the
but it-
amendment to the amendment.
it was the main amendment, because that's not confusing. Counselor, does that change your opinion of anything? Okay. Okay. All right. Is there anything else we need to clear up? I saw there were staff changes in there. Go through
Mayor,
those.
there's one final motion, and I believe Director Wade will cover the staff adjustments
Okay.
recommended.
Please, Director Wade.
Honorable Mayor, City Council, this is staff's last opportunity to come to you with changes to the recommended budget for basically changes in forecast since we prepared these numbers in January and February. You'll remember that the capital changes that staff recommended to you were rather unremarkable, meaning we were moving some projects around, consolidating projects. There are some new items that we're presenting to you this evening, so I'm going to take a little bit more time to make sure I cover each of these new items and you can give them appropriate consideration. This evening, we're asking you to consider changes to the recommended budget in 2025 of $3,045,619 and $10,000 in fiscal year 26. The fiscal year 25 amount certainly seems high, but I want you to know going into my explanation that only about $100,000 is funded by cash reserves. So the theme of tonight's staff changes we're really evaluating for any grant funding sources that had changed. You're going to see quite a few ACRB changes because we have the final version now. We also had some cleanup work there. And there's also some significant funding applications that have been submitted since the time that we were finalizing our budget publications. As we look at changes in the general fund, we'll start out with the city manager's recommendation that we add a city council reserve back into the budget. I'd like to give you all a little bit of history here. We funded our first city council reserve in fiscal year 2015 with an initial appropriation of about $62,000. We carry forward that reserve from year to year until it is entirely spent, and it was allocated out in 2022. And so there is no unallocated council reserve at this time. So the city manager is recommending that we fund a $100,000 reserve that we will carry forward until it is all spent for you to allocate to policy objectives during the year that you may not be aware of at this time. Certainly a practice we've done, it seemed to be rather effective, and she'd like to see you bring that back. Secondly, we have a grant match for a Safe Streets for All grant application that Albany County is submitting for a total of $1.12 million. There's $280,000 in match for this grant. The city's portion would be $160,000. This grant would create a safety action plan. The jurisdiction's tasked would task a consultant to guide the planning process to develop this plan, and the consultant would create an evidence-based plan with life-saving redesigns that significantly reduce or eliminate roadway fatalities and serious injuries. Identified actions would have to be for all roadway users, including pedestrians, bicyclists, public transportation, personal conveyance, micromobility users, motorists, and commercial vehicle operators. So I'm reading to you from the first paragraph of the grant application to give you an overview of what that grant is about, just in case you have not heard about it. That's $160,000 funded from cash reserves for that match. The next amendment is actually to reduce something I recommended to you in the capital budget amendments. A portion of the funds being transferred to the 3rd Street beautification project actually live in fiscal year 2024, and I recommended to you that we transfer that in 25. What we actually need to do is move that in 24. So I'm dialing back that recommendation, and at the next budget amendment you see from staff, you're going to see this $270,105 again to move that appropriation. For the wayfinding project, we're recommending an increase of $156,414, funded entirely by donations. When staff initially proposed this project, these donations were included. However, the appropriations only included the city's portion, which basically means we're short appropriations for this project. So we're going to layer on the donated amounts from our community partners for the wayfinding project. They are donating to construct city assets, and so we will run those donations through our books as recognized revenue, and we will likely construct an asset with those donated amounts. So this is more of a cleanup that we didn't really see the first time we were preparing the budget. Additionally, last night, as you know, you decided on final amounts for fee-for-service agreements. We had an initial placeholder of $270,000 for those agreements, and you ended up approving $280,000. And so we need to adjust that appropriation upward by $10,000 per year. That is labeled boards and commissions because I was working rather quickly. It's actually for fee-for-service agreements, which is described in the text. The final three changes in the general fund are to adjust for ACRB, kind of final draft estimates. Those are all offset by grant funding. Some of the ACRB grant awards did not align with the amounts that we had budgeted, so you'll see a couple $100 adjustments upward. And then additionally, we had not included a budget for certain items that we received funding for, such as the field painter. I also want to call your attention to another description that is incorrect for the $200 adjustment. That should say a parks transport trailer rather than the field painter. We did not make those corrections because there were no changes in the description or the numerical values, and so I figured my explanation would be sufficient. I hope that was the right judgment. That's a lot of changes for the general fund, so I'd like to pause and ask if there are any questions before I move on to the other funds, which are smaller.
Thank you, Director Wade. Councilors, do you have any questions at this point? Okay. Great.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks, Honorable Mayor. In the Capital Construction Fund, we're recommending an amendment for $2.75 million. The City Manager's Office, in collaboration with Public Works, has submitted a request for community project funding through Representative Hageman's office. The requested funding would complete engineering and construction design from the intersection of Bill Nye Avenue and Corthell Road, connecting to the Bill Nye Avenue at 19th Street and extending from 19th Street to 4th Street. At this time, the required city match is unknown, but staff estimate the maximum match at 20%, and we recommend making project appropriations contingent on awarded grant funding, which allows us to move a little bit more quickly if that grant is approved. Engineering and construction design, as you know, are the first step in opening up the Bill Nye corridor. So that may be a project that you have questions about. I'd like to pause after that one, see if anyone has follow-up.
Thank you, Director Wade. Councilor Doherty, please.
I'm just trying to understand the funding structure. We go through the Congresswoman's office instead of through the state or directly with the feds?
Yeah, through you, Mayor, Councilor Doherty, yes, this is unique. We have not had the opportunity to apply to the congressional offices for community project funding in many, many, many years. Congress has recently, I believe it was 18 months, maybe 24 months ago, reopened the opportunity to request community project funding. The sort of lingo that you may be familiar with is earmarks. So we have submitted this application to see if we can get the engineering and design underway for that huge stretch of Bill Nye that would get to 3rd/4th Street. As part of that, the funding, so we're a little unclear on the process, frankly. It sort of seems to be an evolving process. We've been working with Representative Hageman's office. I understand that the representative can forward that to the Congressional Appropriations Committee, who then, if awarded, would make those funds available through federal departments, Federal Highway Administration in this case. And we did speak with WYDOT when we submitted this, and they did support the application because Bill Nye, of course, is part of the Urban Systems Advisory funding, and we've been using urban systems money under FHWA for years to build out Bill Nye. So we have a partnership with WYDOT that's required in order to access federal funds through US DOT or Federal Highway Administration.
Okay.
Councillor Doherty, follow-up.
Well, thank you for finding this money. Thank you.
Councillor Pierce?
I'm just wondering if it's all part of the infrastructure, the federal infrastructure push, would be my guess. I don't know. But that's good, good.
Other questions, councillors? Councillor Richardson, please.
Just out of curiosity, do you know how many other cities or towns have submitted?
Yeah, that's a great question. In the research that we've done, I did see that Representative Hageman's office submitted some community projects last appropriations cycle, and I recall Casper had one. I want to say Cheyenne. You were there with me. Jackson, that's right, I knew. So there were a few submitted. I do not know the outcome and whether or not they were funded, but I know they were submitted by the representative's office. Again, this is a new opportunity, and so we're kind of learning as we go. But we are very appreciative of Representative Hageman's office being willing to accept our application, work with us on it, and forward it on to congressional appropriations. We'll keep you abreast of what happens, and I assume at some point in time, as we learn more, we'll probably have to be back here with some kind of resolution if we were to be awarded for the council to accept that.
Thank you, City Manager. Councillor Shumway, please.
Thank you, Your Honor. I want to make clear that I understand what this ask is for. I think you said it was from 15th to 4th. Why aren't we going to 3rd? Because that's where the signal is going to be.
Yeah, through you, Mayor, Councillor Shumway, I did say to 3rd/4th, and of course that's, the reason for that is there's a bridge that's contemplated to get across Spring Creek, roughly in that vicinity, but the goal is that it would connect to 3rd Street, yes. Likely over the bridge.
And then the other question is, urban systems money obviously does not have the resources to do this. And are we talking about design right now? Are we also talking about construction through the federal allocation?
What we've requested right now is the $2.75 million for design of the corridor. That would include road as well as adjacent municipal infrastructure, water, sewer, et cetera, stormwater. If we receive this, there is the potential, I suppose, to pursue construction money, but this stretch of road right now that we plan to design, engineering's current estimate of the cost to construct it is slightly more than $20 million, as I recall. And so the concern and the reason for submitting this application is, as you know, Council, urban systems money only accrues at a rate of about $500,000 to $700,000 a year. At that rate, we won't build this road for 30 years, and that just doesn't seem like a timeline that the community can wait on. So we were looking for other sources of funding to try to expedite the schedule.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Newman?
Could somebody tell me why we want to build this road and not maintain some of our current roads? Because that seems like a question that I would like to answer.
Absolutely. Through you, Mayor. Councillor Newman, building a corridor is part of our major streets and highways plan. It's always been a planned major arterial that we would build as we were able, and that is why it has had priority from the Urban Systems Committee, which is a joint committee of city, county, university, and YDOT folks here in Laramie. So we've been planning to extend this roadway in order, first and foremost, to open up all of that land for critical housing and other business development. That's probably the main reason. But from a transportation perspective, opening up this road as a major arterial that would parallel east-west Grand Avenue across the community would create better access for emergency responders, as well as take a lot of traffic pressure off of Grand Avenue. I'm sure you can imagine that. So this has been a planned project for probably 20, 30 years, long before I got here. The goal is just to complete it while I'm still on the planet, I guess. But I would say, one of the things we talked with Representative Hageman's office about was there's all kinds of housing that we could develop down there, and it's greenfield, and it's part of the Turner Tract, and we have development plans for it. But no developer will ever be able to bear the cost of building this road and the adjacent wet infrastructure that will be required from the city. So there has to be a public solution, in my opinion, because there's no way private development's going to cash flow this, which means we never get to that housing and we never get to that business development.
Thank you, City Manager. Councillor Shumway?
One more follow-up. Thank you, Your Honor. Did we not negotiate with the private contractors in that area that we would take over the responsibility of the bridge over Spring Creek from 3rd to 4th? Which was going to be theirs, but it,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you with my nodding of head, but Counselor Shumway, yes. Part of what makes this even potentially possible is that we did negotiate the endpoint of 3rd and 4th Street with the developers who had many decades ago agreed to build that bridge. So in addition, working with the Assistant City Manager and folks in Public Works, we've been able to secure certain future easements. We don't have all of it, but we have been slowly over the last 6-7 years kind of putting in place the pieces to make it maybe possible to build this roadway through easements and reservations and that sort of thing.
Thank you, Counselor. Other questions? Okay. Director Wade, back to you then. Thank you.
Thanks, Honorable Mayor. Wrapping up the capital construction fund, we are also populating an interfund transfer for $100,000 to move the funds that I asked you to move from the wayfinding project last meeting into the capital construction fund because I neglected to include that interfund transfer, which does happen from time to times because you forget there's always two sides to something when you move in between funds, and sometimes we work too quickly. In the Rec Center Fund, there are two changes. Both relate to Albany County Rec Board awards. So we've got cardio equipment replacement funded for a reduced amount. We have $20,000 in the budget. It's actually going to be funded for $225 less. And we have a pool grate that has made the final list for ACRB for $24,300. In the Parks and Rec Development Fund, in the aggregate, the requests that are being recommended are reduced from what we have presented to you by $10,965. And finally, in the Water Fund, we're disclosing to you a change in title and description for one of the projects in the plan. It's in the Water Fund. It's the annual valve replacement program, and staff have requested that we add program and equipment to broaden up the use. Remember, capital is specifically appropriated, so if we don't make this change, we actually can't spend money in this way, and staff had said, hey, it's probably wise if we ask the council to broaden this up a little, and so that's what this change is doing. There is no budget impact. I would like to, again, express my gratitude for your understanding of the couple of clerical errors in this memo, and at this time ask if you have any questions.
Thank you, Director Wade. Councilors, any questions on the last part of that?
I just have a procedure question, trying to find what the motion will be, because it's not on the table yet. I mean, it's not on the floor yet, right?
I've got the motion.
Okay, it's,
Yeah, we don't have a motion.
okay, all right.
So
So,
killing it
Is
at
it the-
procedure
Mayor?
tonight. Yeah.
I
City
believe
Clerk.
it's on your summary page.
Turn it over to Counselor Pierce. She's got it up.
Okay. I move to approve the city manager's recommendation for additional changes to the FY 2025-FY 2026 budget, increasing FY 2025 by $3,045,619 and FY 2026 by $10,000.
Second.
Motion by Pierce, seconded by Vice Mayor Cumby. Councilors, we already have had quite a bit of discussion, but if there's any further, it's a great opportunity for it. Okay. We'll go to the public on this. If there's any members of the public wishing to speak to this, go ahead and raise your hand or come forward in the room. Seeing none, I will close public comment. Back to the council. Please, Counselor.
I just want to make a comment that it's interesting that we will spend 30 minutes discussing a $15,000 application, but when it comes to $3.5 million, we just zip right through it.
So we believe them.
There's some irony there, Counselor. Definitely some irony there. Counselor Newman.
I just want to make sure that I understand fully, though, out of the $3 million, it's only $100,000, right, that it's going to cost us. Okay.
Director Wade.
Honorable Mayor, through you, absolutely. So I paused again at that, the big project in the capital construction fund, that's $2.8 million of this. We also talked about that grant match, which is actually cash for almost $200,000. Many of the other items on this amendment are for ACRB monies, and so we did pause at the right time to lead you through those conversations, and I hope you feel comfortable with that.
Thank you, Director. Thanks, Counselor. Other questions? Okay. City Clerk, I'll have you call the roll.
Gabriel.
Yes.
Newman.
Yes.
O'Doherty.
Yes.
Pierce.
Yes.
Richardson.
Yes.
Shumway.
Yes.
Somerville.
Yes.
Cumby.
Yes.
Harrington.
Yes.
That's 9 yeses and 0 nos, Your Honor.
Thank you, City Clerk. Those amendments have been approved. Counselor Pierce, I will go to you for 2D.
Thank you. I move that we adjourn.
Second.
Motion by Pierce, seconded by Richardson. All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed say no. Council, we are adjourned. Thank you all.
Thanks, Counselor.